Hi, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of the Michael Keatley closing arguments. In part 1, it's not identified as part 1, but that's part 1. This is part 2. Part 1, we had to wait 2 hours before they actually started the closing arguments. This included time that the judge and the lawyers researched the issue of whether they should dismiss a juror who said she absolutely could not stay after 5:30 because she had to pick up her children. Then after all this debate, they bring the woman in and she says, well, I can drop them off. I just have to pick them up, but I have someone that can watch them. If you give me an hour, I can be back. So that way they can deliberate into the night if they want to. So they're like, oh, okay, let's do that. Then they started. So then the judge spends about 20 minutes or so doing his instructions to the jury. And then we have the prosecution's opening argument. I'm going to try to timestamp all that once the video processes. But if you're watching back on the replay, let me know in the comments, like #replay. And I'll probably do the same thing here. I will, after the video is over and it processes, I will timestamp where this actually begins. But for now, I'm watching. They're not back in the courtroom yet. The cameraman is probably still having lunch. I took the dogs for a walk. Yay. They were happy. It's got cold again. We had a beautiful day the other day. It was in the 70s. And I actually was hot that night. And then it got cold again last night. I got a glass of iced tea. I'm ready to go. Hey, Robin, she's back. I'm back. I've done all my speeches, all my promo stuff. So I didn't say hit that like button. So hit that like button. Don't forget. To all 2 people that are here. I do appreciate you guys more than you know. So I was doing diamond painting during part 1. I'm trying to get this thing. I literally have 2 sections left. I'm working on, it's 4 sections. I'm working on 2 of the 4 sections. I still don't know what the heck this thing is. I guess when I finish it, I'll know, but I just don't know what it is. Some kind of creature, but yeah, I don't know if it's like a zodiac thing or, who knows. So, Robin, what have you been working on lately? Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to do. Let me go into the live. I want to put the link to my Discord into the live. I probably should do that from the phone. Let me do it here because I have a Discord now for Crafting and Crime Daily has a Discord. Let's have to figure out how to do this. Here we go. Done. Now we want to. So I just put up the thumbnail on the Discord. Now I want to invite people. Invite. Copy link. Okay. Now I will go to the YouTube channel after I turn the volume down. And I will link it into the chat. There we go. Oh, what does this go to? I just found this. What? Oh, I know where it goes. I know where it goes. I just found a lid. You started mini cross stitches, diamond painting, and a little crocheting. Oh, girl, you and me both. I was watching Project Runway yesterday, and there was a phrase that they used on it that I said, that's going to be me. That's going to be my new phrase. Let me see what it was. I said it to Mickey. Let me find it. Do, do, do. I am the slowest text messenger in the world. My goodness. Why aren't they back yet? This is so weird. Hopefully they didn't start a separate feed, but we'll see. No, it's still on this feed, but they just haven't come back yet. Of course, he said a 45-minute lunch, but I'm sure several of them were thinking about, hey, wait a minute, I got to go smoke. When do I get to go smoke? I need a cigarette. Let me put this away before it spills. I have this is how I keep some of the leftover drills in these little containers, not a big container. So I have an awful lot of this color. So I needed some of the drills that were in here. So I'm going to put it away now so I don't spill it. That would not be fun. I should be cross stitching and not diamond painting, but I'm not. I got to keep an eye over here on the stream. Nothing going on yet. And thanks to Lisa, I can't get that stupid song out of my head. I love that song, but it's in my head now and I can't get it out. I'm not going to say the name of the song because I'm trying to get it out of my head. It's like this constant background in my head. Checking out my Instagram. Okay, Robin, that sounds like a good idea. I wish they'd come back from this break. Man, oh man. And waddle away, waddle, 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 till the very next day. Oh, get that song out of my head. Man, oh man. So, yeah. Hi, Mickey. We are waiting for them to come back from the break, and they have not. They've not come back. Let me go over there and check and see what's going on. What's the holdup? Nothing. So I will tell you that Long Crime put up a survey for guilty or not guilty, and if it is split like down the middle, 50%, 43% not guilty, 43% guilty, and then the rest think it's going to be a hung jury. I'm really, I would expect not guilty or hung jury in this case. And I don't know that the state would retry this guy if he comes back not guilty again, or if it comes back hung again. I did read my messages, Mickey. What do you need my thumbnail for? Thumbnail for what? I read all your messages, honey. What new features? Does it have new features? I'm going to look. What new features? I don't see any new features. Oh, we could put some music on, right? Nah. When we waddle away, waddle, waddle, waddle. My thumbnail for tonight? I don't have a thumbnail for tonight. It's your live, not mine. You can make your own layouts. Oh, how you do that? Oh, let's look. I see the little thing here. New layout. Oh, let's play. Let's play. Oh my gosh. Add item. Camera slot. Media slot. Huh. Now how do you get rid of it? Oh, I can press cancel at the end. Okay. Well, that's cool. Camera slot. Okay. Oh, that. So I can move me over to, oh, this is neat. I can move this over to here, and then I could put this over to here. Oh, then what else? What else? Oh, see, how cool is that? All right, camera slot. Oh, another camera. What could we, oh, let's see. Let's put the extra camera there. I am watching they come back live again. Or I mean, I'm already live, but I'll put the courtroom on again. I'm just playing around with this new feature here. Mickey, I don't know if I do want to simulcast because I'm going to be on the road. So, I mean, let me think about it. If I do, I don't, I don't, you got me confused. Anyway, so that's supposed to be the third camera. What happened? What happened? To play with it again. Escape. Ah, that's cool. I don't mind the layouts that are already here, so I don't know that I'd want to create a new one. All right, we're going to remove that until they come back. Well, because I was right up on the microphone. I'm not anymore. There shouldn't be an echo anymore. Actually, I probably will simulcast it on my channel tonight, Mickey, but I still don't know that I need to put the thumbnail, but we'll talk about it later. Apparently, they started in
such a doubt should not sway your
they
opinion.
just started the camera. That's interesting. The cameraman was late getting back.
On the other hand, if after carefully considering, comparing, and weighing all of the evidence,
he's talking about the law anyway,
as members of this jury, do not have an abiding conviction of guilt, or if you have a conviction of guilt, but it is one which is not stable, but one which wavers and vacillates, then the charge is not proven beyond every reasonable doubt, and you must find him, that being Michael Keatley, not guilty because your doubt is in fact reasonable. You'll be applying this very jury instruction throughout your deliberation. Where can a reasonable doubt arise from? Where does it come from?
Trying to make sure is it still echoing?
What do you look for in that reasonable doubt? A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of Michael Keatley may arise from the evidence itself, or conflicts in the evidence, or the lack of evidence. Weighing the evidence. So a lot of testimony has been provided to you all, some evidence introduced. What do we do with it? How do we view it? How do we deal with it? This instruction is going to tell you. It's up to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what's reliable and what's not. And there's some factors that you're going to consider throughout your deliberations on that particular issue. But you shouldn't lose your common sense. You decide which is the best evidence and which evidence should not be relied upon in considering your verdict. You may find some evidence not reliable and less reliable than other evidence. But the instruction then gives you some factors to consider in analyzing the evidence in this case. And what does it say? Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to know the things of which the witness testified? Did the witness have an opportunity? Remember Jennifer Dicer, one of the top leading experts in the country concerning eyewitness identity. The witness and things about which that witness testified. Opportunity. Did the witness have an accurate memory? Was the witness honest and straightforward? Did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? Does the witness's testimony agree with other testimony? Has a witness been offered or received any money, preferred treatment, or other benefit? Any pressure or threat? Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? Impeachment. Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? Impeachment. And whether the witness has been convicted of a felony. Those are factors that the state of Florida, in this great country, is giving you so that you can use those factors with the evidence that was introduced in this trial and the testimony. Next. Jennifer Dysart again. Jennifer Dysart talked to you about these factors. In evaluating eyewitness identification, in deciding how much weight to give this testimony, you may consider the various factors mentioned in these instructions concerning credibility of witnesses. Voila. It's a special pin. I don't know. It's a special pin. I'm turning the lights off and on. What's going on here? I like the moment, though. I think it was nice. In addition, in evaluating an eyewitness identification testimony, you may consider capacity and opportunity to observe the offender based upon Dysart length of time for observation and the conditions at the time of the observation, including lighting and distance. Jennifer Dysart, our great state of Florida, has adopted those recommendations in these jury instructions. Whether the identification was a product of eyewitnesses' own recollection or was it a result of some influence or suggestion, contamination, influence or suggestion. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, contamination is rampant in this case. Rampant. The circumstances under which a defendant was presented to the eyewitness identification, any inconsistencies in the identification made by the witness, any instance in which the eyewitness did not make an identification when given the opportunity to do so. That was going to be a big one that we're going to talk about a bit later, both as to Jose Rodriguez, both as to Gonzalo Rivera. The witness's familiarity with the subject identified. Had that witness seen that person before? How many times had that witness purchased ice cream? Did that witness donate to the suspect? by seeing a photo of him and a little flyer on that jar. Lapse of time between the event and the identification, and whether the eyewitness and the offender are a different race or ethnic group. Remember that one from Jennifer Dicer. Michael Keatley himself suffered a horrific event in 2010. He was the victim of a robbery, brutal shooting, left for dead. But fortunately, the very community that he worked in, that very community that ice cream truck would go up and down those roads, his route, those people in that community saved his life. You've heard testimony in this case about how that community felt about him and how he felt about that community. You saw a video where some of that community was expressing their gratitude of Michael Keatley, and he was expressing his gratitude towards them. And Detective Nolan was assigned to conduct that investigation. Detective Nolan was brought before you to tell you what he did and what he didn't do in that investigation. Detective Nolan was about to retire. 6 months after that horrific robbery and shooting, he retired. He told you Michael Keatley would contact him often. He also told you that it was important for victims of crimes to keep their eyes and ears open, to provide him information that possibly could help him in his investigation. What made me fall almost out of my chair is that when Michael said to Detective Nolan, "Detective, the word on the street is that they're Hispanics that did this to me." What was Detective Nolan's response to that? "Oh, don't tell me that. That could hurt our case." Let's think about that. That could hurt our case. Not, "I'll look into it because we want to get the people that did this to you, Michael." No. We want to preserve our case. It's an African American. Let's keep it that way. We'll find some African American to charge.
Objection, Your Honor. That's not in evidence.
I'll instruct the jury that what the attorneys say is not evidence in the case. Rely on your own recollection as what the testimony of the witnesses were.
Why would Detective Nolan make such a statement? You take all of the information. You take all of the leads. You follow every lead. Because in our system of justice, we want to get the right person. We do not want to make mistakes. Michael had serious injuries. You heard from Dr. Halper, and I'm not going to go through every, not that I could, I'm not going to go through every injury that he had because most of them I can't pronounce. But they were significant. That is the limitations that Michael Keatley had. They did some surgeries, tried to improve it a bit, but these injuries were horrific. Let's talk about ocean mist. First officer that arrived at the scene was Patrol Deputy McMurtry. And so let's talk a little bit about what he told us to begin with. He said, man, it was dark. I arrived at that scene and it was dark, so dark that I had to have a flashlight. Chaos. And he was familiar with that scene because that was a community that was full of gangs, guns, and drugs. He enlightened you. He enlightened you to the fact that to get to this ocean mist community, you had to travel some pretty heavily traveled highways that had quite a few businesses. Even back in 2010, these businesses would have video equipment. Remember, this homicide occurred sometime before 2:22 in the morning. It's not like a lot of people are out in Hillsborough County at 2:22 in the morning. So the opportunities to capture someone in a green or blue van at 2:22 in the morning by some of these cameras was a good thing. It was not only a good thing for the prosecution, but it was a good thing for the defense. Detective Lugo doesn't call the public defender's office or a private lawyer like myself and say, hey, by the way, we got a murder over here at Ocean Mist. Can you all come over here and preserve whatever evidence you want? If they don't do it right, it is gone forever. To the detriment of the accused. No one did any real search or investigation for those videos. The one attempt for a video, remember this testimony from Detective Lugo himself, the one attempt for a video. Yeah, I sent someone over there to get a video, and we're going to get nighttime video because this happened in the early morning hours, it would be dark. Oh, shucks. They got daytime videos instead of nighttime videos. When did you find out about it? Oh, sorry, too late. This is a homicide investigation. This is not a misdemeanor possession of weed. This is not a petty theft, although, in my opinion, all investigations should be thorough, competent, and following all leads, making no assumptions, and not rushing to judgment. Video going. Mrs. Patel, crime scene investigator. The most important, can I have that last one, Danielle, please? One of the most important aspects of a homicide investigation is that crime scene. Because once you leave the crime scene, there's no going back to get any evidence. You get it then, you preserve it in its most virgin state. Remember when I was talking to Detective Lugo? Detective Lugo, what did they teach you at the academy? Just when you first started as a law enforcement officer. What did they teach you at the academy? Preserve everything to its most virgin state. Most virgin state. If you got a recorder, you record it. If you got a video, you videotape it. And so Mrs. Patel, she's taking orders from who? She's taking orders from the lead detective in this case. It's his responsibility. When Detective Lugo was up there, I asked him, whose responsibility is this case? It's the lead detective's. Oh yeah, you've got some help. But you need to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do and make sure that they were doing it right. Investigator Patel. Why? Crime scene Patel doesn't even know the dimensions of that porch. Crime scene investigator Patel never did a diagram. No measurements. No diagram. Do I fault her? Absolutely not. That was Detective Lugo's responsibility. And not only the responsibility to the prosecution, but most importantly, the responsibility to the accused. I can't go there now to preserve anything. See this light? Crime scene investigative light. You're going to see, and I've underlined for you, that the perspective of the witness. What was the witness able to see? What was the victim able to see during the shooting? The instructions that the court, that Your Honor, Christopher Sabella is going to read to you, says you got to consider that. How do we consider that? How do we consider that? When no one knows what it's like to be up here looking out. No light meter, no camera, without this, of course. No light meter, no camera, no perspective over what these victims and witnesses could even see. Some of the most basic crime scene investigative procedures known to man or woman were never employed. Damaging our administration of justice. Detective Lugo failed to order any reconstruction of any kind. Mrs. Patel only does what the detective directs her to do. can't believe it. No street lights. No street lights. No, 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 no. Zero. That is a super, super, super dark area of Hillsborough County. Nowhere. Detective Lugo admitted, you're absolutely right. No street lights, dark as can be. Do we not think that when Detective Lugo gets there and realizes that at 4 o'clock in the morning, do you think that it should even cross his mind? I got to figure out whether these people were able to see anything. I got to figure out whether they were able to see what they're claiming to see. Omar Balon, also known as Creeper. They brought you a dressed up picture and showed you, oh, look, this is Omar Balon in 2020. Prosecution did. They did that with David Beckwith, by the way, when they were doing their closing arguments as well. They dressed him up a little bit. This was not Omar Balon in 2010. Frankly, it wasn't Omar Balon in 2023. I brought you Omar Balon as an adverse witness. He's not a friend of the defense. But you needed to meet Omar Balon, also known as Creeper. Omar bought ice cream from Keatley on numerous occasions. Keatley has stopped at his house. It's a very important fact here. People that are out there selling ice cream in a neighborhood, they're going to remember, maybe not by name, but they're going to remember their customers. Because the next day when they go by that same street, what are they going to do? They're going to stop at that house, or at least slow down very slowly to see if those patrons come out of their house to buy some more ice cream. Mr. Keatley had been at that 507. Mr. Keatley had been at that 507. In fact, if you remember, Omar Balon said, yeah, Mr. Keatley would park in front of 507 Ocean Mist. I had a normal relationship to customer. He was a pretty nice guy. Yeah, I knew that he had been robbed. I saw the donation jars around town. And in direct examination, he says, yeah, numerous times I bought ice cream. But the minute that the prosecution gets up, prosecution says, Mr. Balon, you've only bought ice cream twice. Yep. And then when I get back in cross, wait a minute, you just told me on direct, numerous, now you're saying twice? He says, well, maybe three. I consider numerous. Use those factors to determine credibility. Use those factors to determine credibility. Ocean Mist, that community is gang infested, drug infested. This is bullet holes, street signs with bullet holes. And of course, Creeper is putting it on his Facebook because he thinks that's kind of cool, I guess. That you would have signs in our community that are shot with firearms and bullet holes in them. Something interesting happened at 2:30 in the morning on November 25th, 2010. Remember, that homicide would have occurred sometime before 2:22. Something interesting happened at around 2:30. One of the Lucas boys goes over to Creeper's window. Creep, get up. Now, there's just been a homicide that happened, Mr. Lucas, on your front porch. And you're worried about going to get Creeper? Why were they getting Creeper up into that scene? What is his position there in that community for that to have to take place? Of course, Lugo has no idea that Creeper was out there outside of the tapes by 2:30 in the morning. When I asked Detective Lugo, hey, Creeper was out there, right? I don't know where he was. I know that, at some point in time, he was at District 4 because my deputies brought him. But we have to wonder. We have to wonder for an individual that has Ocean Mist Gangsters tattooed on his body, Ruskin Outlaw, and a few other ugly things. Why was he called at 2:30 in the morning to come to 604 Ocean Mist? I asked Creeper, I can't do the sign, but it's something, fingers going somewhere. So I asked him, what is that? He says, it's a sign, it's a gang sign. What does it mean? I don't know. He's affiliated with Westside. He's affiliated with the Ocean, but he doesn't know. He's throwing the signs on the pictures. He's throwing the signs. He's throwing the signs, but I don't know what that means. Was he being honest, ladies and gentlemen, with you? Know what throwing signs are? Detective Lugo told you, hey, with these gangs, there's turf battles. One of the things that Creeper told you, Omar Bailon told you, is that Ocean Mist is my street. That was very telling. His street. His street. Of course, Detective Lugo didn't even know he was affiliated with the gangs. Detective Lugo interviewed him at 4 o'clock in the morning at District 4 and does not know that Omar Bailon is affiliated with gangs. What planet was Detective Lugo at that morning? He suspected. Detective Lugo told you under oath here, you know what? I suspected it was a drive-by shooting. When I got there, I thought it was a drive-by shooting. And when he went to District 4, what was he asking? Jose Rodriguez, Omar Bailon, Omar's girlfriend, all those individuals, what was he asking? Hey guys, you members of a gang? You all are gangbangers? Does he ever even look to the simplicity of a Facebook page. You know, even back in 2010, people post all kinds of goodies on the internet. Never once even searched any Facebook, any social media on any of these people. He was a member of the gang unit before he came to homicide. He never once called the gang unit and said, hey, I got some people here. I'm going to give you a list. Tell me what's going on with these folks. That's the whole purpose of the gang unit at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. They gather intelligence. Especially when he knew, because these folks had told him this homicide. Two weeks before this homicide, 604 Ocean Mist Drive had been fired upon by a gun. 2 weeks. So I say, Detective Lugo, 2 weeks and you didn't follow that lead? Nope, didn't follow that lead. Can I now follow that lead? Do I have any opportunity to follow that lead? 12 years later? Who has the most to lose here? My Detective Lugo failing to follow that lead. The accused. Omar Balon tells Lugo, here's my girlfriend, Mrs. Jaramillo, whatever her name was. And something very interesting happened in that conversation that Lugo had with Omar Balon's girlfriend. Omar Balon's girlfriend's, I guess, boyfriend or husband, whatever you want to call him, was in prison. And Detective Lugo said, from the information that he got from Mrs. Jaramillo, I think we need to take a look at the prison phone records for this Andres Gonzalez. Why do you think? You think this gentleman that was in prison, so he's a criminal, that was the boyfriend of Mrs. Jaramillo, do you think that he was real happy about his child living with Reaper? And so I asked Lugo, hey, I'm glad you got those phone records. Did you listen to him? No. I didn't listen to him. But did you go and interview him? I mean, I doubt this guy is in prison talking about trying to find somebody to hurt Creeper on the phone. Did you go and interview him? Did you evaluate his credibility? Did you evaluate any leads that could have come from that interview? No. If it was important enough for Miss Jaramillo to tell Detective Lugo, why wasn't it important enough for Detective Lugo to investigate that lead? It's gone. Any potential now is gone. the stop of Michael Keatley in the van. Trent Clark came to you by video. He was that officer, if you remember, in the Star Unit. And Trent Clark worked with a pack of officers called the Star Unit. And their job was to go out there and do surveillance on individuals that detectives were requiring that type of surveillance. If you remember, even Detective Lugo told you, I wanted to interrogate Michael Keatley. So this Star Unit's out there following Michael Keatley wherever he goes. And Detective Schramm testified that, yeah, you know, I told the Star Unit, if they stop Michael Keatley, I want to be called right away. And so lo and behold, voila, by some miracle, there is some infraction that causes the Star Unit to stop and detain Michael Keatley. He's not given a traffic ticket, but they stop him. And they say, oh, you know, you're going over the speed limit. No radar gun, nothing to preserve the reason for the stop. And you remember that one piece of evidence that was really unusual? When they impounded Michael Keatley's vehicle, the impound sheet said that his van was abandoned on the side of the road. Abandoned on the side of the road? And so I asked Detective Lugo, what do you mean by abandoned on the side of the road? You all stopped it. And then after you drove him from that particular scene all the way to District 4. I just know how that came out. I frankly don't know why they stopped him. What do we think was going on in Michael Keatley's head? Knowing he wasn't speeding, stopped by the police, and now over District 4. Does anyone think that he had any confidence whatsoever in these detectives? Because after Clark stops Mr. Keatley, he calls Detective Schramm. We know that guy, right? We'll get to him. Detective Schramm. We're going to tell you a little bit about Detective Schramm in just a few seconds on a stipulation that the defense and the prosecution had about Detective Schramm. But Detective Schramm has a little recorder that he has available to him wherever he goes. Remember? Preserving evidence in its most virgin state. And so it takes a while for Detective Schramm to get there to the scene because he was wherever he was. Did you hear a recording of what happened in the conversation between Detective Schramm and Michael Keatley on the side of that road before he was whisked over to District 4? Ask yourself, why did we not hear that conversation? What was told to Michael Keatley on the road that you find it necessary to falsify a report, a police report, and call it the vehicle was abandoned? So Michael goes to District 4. Michael, we're going to take over your robbery investigation. We're going to be the guys that are going to find the people that did this to you, Michael. of interest on the next screen, here's the van that was stopped on the side of the road. The one thing that came out of this van right here, that just doesn't lie. It's that the only fingerprint that they found in this van was of Michael Keatley's left hand. When I asked Lugo, hey, which hand of a fingerprint did you find in that car? Detective Lugo. I don't know. I don't know if any right ones were found either. Well, Detective Lugo, in the whole case, how many fingerprints did you get of Michael Lugo that were anything but his left hand? Because remember, there was one on a container here that was found. There was 2 in a composition book at his home. All 3 left hands. Is that a coincidence? Is that just a coincidence? Or is it because he doesn't use his right hand? Maybe for a shelf. Nothing of evidentiary value was found within this vehicle. One of the things that I was really happy about when the prosecution did her presentation is that one of these, I believe, was Bell, said, oh yeah, the individual that was shooting actually was kicking me. That's beautiful. I love that. Because they're claiming that Michael Keatley had these black boots that were found in Michael Keatley's parents' home. And they analyzed those boots for blood, for DNA, and they analyzed for blood and DNA everywhere in that car. No blood, no DNA from anyone at the scene of the homicide. 0, nada, in Spanish. How long did it take Michael Keatley to get from the side of the road to District 4? Remember? Took Victor Lugo an hour to get from his home to District 4. What was happening on the side of the road with Michael Keatley and Detective Schramm for all that time? He wasn't given a ticket. And there was no recording. Remember we talked about it? You can put that recording, little tiny digital things that they use, put it right in their pocket. Nobody knows whether they're being recorded or not. It's not against the law. Officers can do it all day long. It's a thing of beauty. Because then we get that recorder and we put it here and we press that button and we play it. So that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear everything that's happened. Not difficult, very powerful. Very powerful for law enforcement. So Keatley now is at District 4. Let's talk about District 4 and Michael Keatley before I get too far afield here. two detectives, Detective Schramm, Detective Lugo. You're going to be able to hear, if you'd like again, the audio recording, both at District 4 and thereafter, between Mr. Keatley, Detective Lugo, Detective Schramm, and then by himself, Detective Schramm, on the way back to Keatley's home. What happens when Michael Keatley gets to District 4? Brought into a room, it's a small room, it's got video capabilities, audio recording capabilities. Detective Lugo says, you know, we started talking to him at some point in time, I can't tell you how long we talked to him, before I realized that the video wasn't recording. Did he tell you how it was that he was able to realize that the video wasn't recording? Better yet, when he turns on his recorder, finally, do you hear Detective Lugo saying, hey, Mr. Keatley, you know, we were video recording you before. There was a problem with the video. I'm now going to turn on my recorder so that we can continue our conversation. Is that what he says? He says nothing about a video. No. All he says is, hey, you know, we've had some conversations before. I read you Miranda rights, and we're going to record. Listen to that audio. And you know what else is totally incredible? I say, Detective Lugo, a recorder is one thing. Detective, a recorder is one thing. But you know, your office, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, employs all these fine deputies. They draft a form called a waiver of Miranda. They go to the trouble. It allows one to read that form, acknowledge reading it, waiving it. Where is it? You use it all the time, Detective, right? Yeah, I use it all the time. Where's that form? Remember my discussions? Oh, find it for us. We're waiting. We're waiting. The most important document that explains to an individual their constitutional rights. That is why do you think they call it Miranda? It's the landmark case of our criminal jurisprudence. And we can't find the form. Was that form ever provided? I argue to you, no, it wasn't. Was that video ever turned on? I argue to you, no, it wasn't. Detective Lugo knew when he went into that District 4 room, he knew that the victims and witnesses, Jose Rodriguez being the witness, had indicated that the shooter was carrying a black short barrel pump action shotgun. I remember what Lugo told you from the very beginning of when he saw Mr. Keatley. Yeah, looked like he had some disabilities on that right hand, and yeah, he was limping. So why would he want to videotape that? I would want it. You would want it. Our system of justice. But we don't have it. Nowhere to be found. Do you think by now? Do you think by now that Michael Keaton has absolutely no trust in individuals and realizes that with the rumors that are going around, let's not forget those, the rumors, hey, Michael Keaton committed this homicide. That was because Creeper was bragging that he had robbed him. And, he just went over there and, he just killed everybody. That was the rumor that was going around. Frankly, it was the text that was going around. It was everywhere, including on his lap. Do we think that Michael Keatley had any confidence that they were going to do the right thing? Had they done the right thing yet from the start? Remember, I asked Lugo, if you wanted to talk to Michael Keatley, why don't you just call him on the phone? Why don't you just go by his house and say, hey, Mike, can we chat a little bit? Did we have to stop him on the side of the road in the middle of the night and drag him over to District 4 and leave his wallet, his phone, and all the belongings in this, quote, abandoned car? Michael Keatley had absolutely no trust in these detectives. He knew that if he told them the truth, hey, yes, I've heard of Creeper, I did some research on Creeper, that he would be cuffed right there and sent away. No one in their right mind would have done that with these two detectives that were out of control. Let's talk about Detective Schramm. You don't have to move there. I'll get to it. If you can find it, Danielle, fine, but I'm not good. This is Detective Schramm. This is Detective Schramm. Suspended because since 2006, he's been violating the rules and regulations of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. This is Detective Schramm. As early internal affairs investigation was opened on, yes, guess who? Detective Schramm. You know that guy that was telling Michael all those lies? Hey, we got telephone records and we got you over there at that scene of the crime. Hey, we got you, your description that these guys gave were to a T to you. The descriptions were 6'1", 6'2", 250 to 280 pounds. He was 212 pounds. Brown, orange hair. He didn't have brown, orange hair. And Detective Schramm lies and lies and lies. And do you think he is stupid not to see it? Do you think he is stupid not to recognize when these detectives are trying to shove a case down his throat? Good old Detective Schramm. What was he doing? Accessing the DMV records over 100 times for non-law enforcement purposes? Good thing he was suspended. Are we going to believe a detective that was suspended by his own department for his own outrageous conduct? Detective Lugo. Remember, Detective Lugo started Homicide Division sometime in 2008. He hadn't even taken the courses, 2 courses that you're supposed to take until 2009. And he comes upon this investigation. We talked about the fact he gave no direction whatsoever at the crime scene. We've talked about the leads that came upon him at District 4 when he was interviewing those people early in the morning, failing to follow all those. And let's not forget the green minivan with a guy with a shotgun in his hand robbing some store and him not following that lead. Or the other guy in a minivan that ran from the police and not following that lead either. He failed to follow any lead, with the exception of the rumor. How dangerous is that? He could have followed them all. He could have preserved them all. He chose not to. He knew there were turf wars in this particular area. But never ever followed any single gang lead whatsoever. If Creeper was the head of West Side, and there was a turf war, who would they want to take out? Creeper. And if they couldn't take out Creeper, they'd take out the rest of them. Sounds familiar? Even Jose Rodriguez told me that, yeah, these guys on the porch were also affiliated with West Side. We'll never know. We will never know what really happened there. For one reason and one reason only. You can put that blame on Detective Lugo. Let's take you through his investigation. We talked about the fact that it was dark out there. We've talked about the fact that he spoke to everyone that he could that morning. And so he was eager. He was eager to follow this rumor. This is a rumor that he was eager to follow. Because what do we know he did right away? I'm going to show that photo pack to Jose Rodriguez. Now we know he knows about the SOPs, right? We know that Detective Lugo knows of the SOPs. How do we know that Detective Lugo knows of the SOPs? Because the Jose Rodriguez photo pack was done in blind rotation, in blind viewing by an administrator other than Detective Lugo. Blind administration. Remember the SOP from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office that says shall and must. We're going to go through it in a few seconds here. But the first one that he selects, because he wants an ID. He wants an ID of this rumor. That's where he's going. Forget everything else. I'm going down this track and only this track. And so he does the blind administration without ever realizing, this is incredible, without ever realizing that Jose Rodriguez has purchased ice cream from Michael Keaton a dozen times. Jose Rodriguez has purchased ice cream from Michael Keaton at that very address, 604 Ocean Mist. Now, if Jose Rodriguez has purchased ice cream from Michael Keaton a dozen times at 604 Ocean Mist, Jose Rodriguez would have said, I recognize the shooter. I've bought ice cream from him a dozen times. But guess what? Detective Lugo never knew that. Because he never asked. Remember when I asked Lugo, well, did you know? He didn't even know as of today. This week, excuse me. Or maybe it was 3 weeks, 4 weeks. He didn't know. How can you present a photo pack to an individual and not know that the picture in the photo has seen that person 12 times? Saying the photo pack, hey, you see this guy 12 times. And the reason that Jose Rodriguez did not pick Michael Keaton out of that photo pack is because Michael Keaton was not the shooter. It is as simple as that. But Detective Lugo didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to ask the questions that could derail his one-track mind. And so he blames a lot of people. It's everybody else's responsibility, not his, not Lugo's, everybody else. Hey, there's so many people doing things as their due. I got to talk about something, and it's really kind of out of place here, but I have to talk about it because it's so important. I don't know what that is. When they did the search warrant on Michael Keaton's residence, that first search warrant, they seized the laptop in the hotspot. But in order to go into the laptop, meaning in order to image the hard drive, you now have to do another search warrant. And Detective Gregory Thomas, remember I asked Detective Lugo, hey, you assigned Detective Gregory Thomas to do a search warrant application to a judge. And when you do those search warrant applications to a judge, you have to put down facts that are true and correct, that establishes probable cause to go into that laptop and image the hard drive. Yep, I was the one that assigned Gregory Thomas. Did you tell Gregory Thomas that when you went into the Keaton property, you saw papers and documents, okay, containing pictures and photographs of the victims? That application had those words. It went before a judge where Gregory Thomas had to say, I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. It was false. No pictures, no photographs of any victim, was in Michael Keaton's home. How did that happen? Lugo tries to blame Detective Gregory Thomas. I say Detective Lugo gave that information. He wanted to go to that laptop. Fortunately, that laptop really useless. But it's the process. It's the process where you every rule and directed by the detective in this case. Why does that happen? Is there any excuse whatsoever for that? I think y'all can read rather than me saying these ugly words of what that rumor was all about. Remember, this came out on the 25th of November. How does that happen? How does that text come out on the 25th of November, the same day of this homicide? You're either going to have to be there or you're going to have to do it because you want to throw the police off. And maybe both. Detective Lugo tries to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to make every excuse why his investigation is not falling into place. Every excuse in the book, you name it, he's got it, all the way down the line. Keep that in the back of your mind. That came out on November 25th, 2010. And he doesn't want to chase it. He does not want to chase it. I'm not much with texting, but I know this much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That came from somewhere and it went somewhere. And it doesn't take a mental giant to follow the lead. Subpoenas, search warrants. You're going to find out where it came from, where it went, and why. But he doesn't want to. When I ask him, did you follow this lead? Did you ask any of the people that you knew that had received this to help you out here? No. He didn't care where it went. He didn't care where it came from. He didn't want to investigate that lead that frankly was slapping him in the face. That lead was slapping him in the face. And he ignored it. You think I'm going to be able to do something 12 years later? What did Ronald Witt tell you here happens to records after a period of time? Who gets hurt by that? Yeah, the prosecution. What about the accused? The SOPs we're going to talk about in a little bit, but you can read them. They're part of the evidence. Look at them. Please look at them. The most significant research in eyewitness identification that I can remember during my lifetime.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain. Counsel's own personal opinions are not accurate.
Significant research, as was told to you, even by Detective Lugo, had been done across this country concerning eyewitness identification and blind administration. If you look at the actual, Danielle, can you give me those SOPs, please? If you look at the SOPs, they tell you, they actually tell you procedures, oh, sorry. Procedures surrounding police lineup have remained unchanged for many years, but research and DNA exonerations have proven that eyewitness identifications can be somewhat flawed and should be handled more effectively. Now, do you know what Detective Lugo said to that? I wrote it down because that was one of the ones that I almost fell over. Detective Lugo said, well, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office wanted to be the best, but I didn't need to follow that. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office wanted to be the best in implementing such a procedure. Should we not want to be the best when we're accusing someone of murder in the first degree? Should we not want to be the best? Is there any room that is slapping him in the face? We know what this means. DNA exonerations after people have been convicted and spent years in prison. Detective Lugo told you here under oath he does not want to be the best. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, whether this is a petty theft or whether it's a first-degree murder, it must be the very best that is available and that we can do. It is the intent of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. I applaud them to seek more reliable for eyewitness identification. Ultimately, mitigate potential misidentification of innocent people. Thank God for our sheriff. Is there any excuse whatsoever? I don't want to forget about Jose Rodriguez just briefly because that's an important part. Jose Rodriguez that morning of November 25th, 2010, while he was at District 4 being interviewed, when they asked him, Jose Rodriguez, the detective's talking to him. He's placed under oath. Jose Rodriguez, swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes, I do. He's being interviewed by Detective Lugo. Do you know Creeper? No. Jose Rodriguez lied in the face of Detective Lugo, which is a crime. And he totally disregarded it. Why was Jose Rodriguez lying about Creeper? It's easy for the prosecution to say, oh, yeah, no, Mr. Keaton wasn't truthful about Creeper. Did she say a peep about Jose Rodriguez? Not a peep. But what that does to a competent and prudent homicide detective, it puts him on guard in the evaluation of credibility of Jose Rodriguez. You lied to me once, shame on you. You lied to me twice, shame on me. no investigation as to why that happened that morning on November 25th. Back a little bit more with Detective Lugo and the crime scene that we had here. He never himself went and sat in those chairs to see what the perspective was, day or night. He said he had gone back, I think he said a dozen times or what have you. Not once did he sit in any of those chairs that those individuals were in to see what could they see, what was the perspective. He didn't even know where they were seated. He had no idea where any of the victims were positioned in that porch. It's like Detective Nolan not knowing where Michael Keatley had been shot. He was investigating Michael Keatley's robbery and attempted murder and had no idea where he'd been shot. Detective Nolan, great investigator, according to the prosecution. And so what happens now? It's a doozy. Jose does not pick out Michael Keatley, but here comes Juan Hernandez. And Juan Hernandez, if you recall, according to Detective Lugo, had received a photograph, and then the morning of the 26th had received a text. Photograph was of Michael Keatley, same one that you see there. And so he calls Jose Rodriguez calls Detective Lugo and says, "Detective, I know who shot us. It was Michael Keatley." And so Detective Lugo says, "Send me the photo. Text me that photo right away." Of course, somewhere between the texting of the photo and today, Detective Lugo has no idea where that photo is at. But he goes with Mr. Reliable, Detective Schramm, over to interview Jose Rodriguez. And guess who's there at the house at 604 Ocean? Miss Jose Rodriguez and Juan Hernandez. And so Lugo realizes we got a problem. We got the classic of classics contamination. Because before Jose Rodriguez was saying, "I don't know who it is and it isn't in this photo pack." And now he's shown one photo and he's saying, "Oh, it's Michael Keatley." If nothing else, it tells you how easily people are influenced to make a 360-degree turn on that suggestive one photo. And of course, everything in the text. And give Jose Rodriguez some credit because he even said, "Yeah, even before, I got the photo, I've heard of rumors." And so now Lugo's got a problem. Oh, okay, we got some contamination going around this community. I knew it was going rampant, and now it's really affecting, people in this case. And Juan Hernandez is there. And so he says, "Juan, where did you get this picture and where did you get this text?" Remember, they're all sworn under oath, right? Juan Hernandez says, "I'm not going to tell you." What do you think of that, Detective Lugo? "I'm just not going to tell you." Detective Lugo, "Okay, no big deal. No subpoenas, no search warrants, no immunity. He was going to give Beckwith immunity. Might as well give Juan Hernandez some immunity, right?" He is not wanting, Detective Lugo is not wanting to chase this rumor. And so he tells these two uncooperative individuals, because you can't call them anything else. Hernandez is not being cooperative with him. Jose Rodriguez has lied, certainly, when he was first interviewed by him. And so he tells these two individuals, "I don't want you to go and tell Gonzalo Rivera." Now think about that. Number one, now you're advertising that you're going to go show Gonzalo Rivera a photo pack. Number two, you're relying on the dishonesty of these two fellas for them not to go to Gonzalo Rivera and show Gonzalo both the text and the photo. That's what Detective Lugo did. So now he's going to take matters into his own hands. Right? He's going to take matters into his own hands. The next photo pack, he's going to do himself. Why he thinks that now doing the next photo pack and violating every SOP known to man is appropriate. Why does he think, Detective Lugo, that now, you know, I know my sheriff wants to be the best of the best, but I don't want to be the best of the best. I'm just going to do my own thing. And so he gets this photo pack for Mr. Beltran. He doesn't know who made up the photo pack for Mr. Beltran. You remember the SOP say, hey, you got to know who did the photo pack. You got to be extra cautious. The fillers have to be individuals that, you know, are close in the description of what the victims are saying the person looked like. And you can't do it yourself, Detective Lugo, because you know who the suspect is. You have to have blind administration. And by the way, Lugo, you also have to put the little numbers on the back of each photo. You got to follow the rules. They're mandatory. Must and shall. Read that. You can read that entire SOP. There is no wiggle room. It's must and shall. Must and shall. Must and shall. And so he goes to Mr. Beltran next. Because, you know, now he realizes, hey, these rumors are out there and they're rampant. And I got to get me an identification of my target. Because Michael Keatley was, there's no doubt, his only target was Michael Keatley. And so he does his own presentation on Mr. Beltran and no identification. If you recall Mr. Beltran's testimony, his testimony, if anybody had the best view of anyone out there, it would have been him. And his testimony is very, very consistent. You got a guy that's, you know, 6'1", 6'2", 250, 280. He tries to twist it a little bit over here in this trial. I believe he was the one that said, 180. And then all of a sudden, when we showed all of the previous depositions and hearings, yeah, you're right, 250 to 280. There's quite a difference. But brown, orange hair, 6'1" to 6'2", 250 to 280 pounds, dark brown hair, black shirt, said security on the back, sheriff on the front, and didn't see any physical disabilities of the shooter, black pump action gun. Could not ID the shooter. 2 down, 1 to go. 2 down, 1 to go. There were 3 possible individuals that could possibly give an eyewitness identification of the shooter. We're done with Jose Rodriguez. Now we're done with Mr. Beltran. We have 1 left. 1 left. Couple things I want to talk about with Jose Rodriguez before we leave. And more importantly, with Detective Lugo. Detective Lugo did a search warrant on the Keatley property. He told you he had no idea where Larry Beckwith lived. Think about that. Had no idea where Larry Beckwith would live, which is where David Beckwith would live or stay often. keep that in the back of your mind. Here's the lead detective. The Keatley property, 28. It's back in the middle of the there's a little piece of land that belongs to Larry Beckwith, and David Beckwith stays there. Keep that in mind. And so now we go to his last person, Gonzalo Rivera. And so he goes before November 30th. You remember I said, Lugo, when did you go? Oh, I know I went sometime before November 30th. What day was it? I don't know because I never memorialized it. But I went and I spoke to family members and what have you. Did you ask any family members whether they had seen the text messages, the photos? Did you ask any members of the family whether they heard the rumors? No questions whatsoever. He goes back on the 30th. On the 30th, the nurse says, hey, listen, he's hallucinating. But despite the fact that he's hallucinating, he goes into the room with the sister being there and he says, hey, I'm coming back tomorrow with some photos to show you. I'm coming back tomorrow with some photos to show you. Why are you advertising? Why are you telling Gonzalo Rivera that he's coming back with some photos? And Gonzalo says, I want to see them now. No, I'm not going to see them now. And he comes back the next day all by himself. Violating again every SOP known to man from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Doesn't know who actually did the photo pack. Doesn't know if the supervisor has approved it. Doesn't know who picked the fillers. Dyser told you about these fillers. You judge for yourself. She told you what she thought about these fillers. And so on December the 1st, he goes by himself. Remember, little recorder in the pocket, right? And he goes into that room, recorder's not on. And he asks 20 questions to determine the lucidity of Gonzalo Rivera. And after he says he's satisfied, he then does the presentation. But remember, according to Detective Lugo, there are no numbers on the back of the photos. He doesn't have a sequential lineup form. That's that form, and Danielle will show it to you in a quick second. That form that allows you to put down every name in the sequential order that you're going to show it, so it is memorialized. Doesn't use that form. And Gonzalo is lying on a bed. And he starts presenting those photos one by one. One by one. And as Gonzalo Rivera told you here under oath, I selected the fourth photo shown to me. The fourth. Gonzalo Rivera came here under oath and told you, I selected the fourth photo shown. Still no recorder of that process. And so he says now, Detective Lugo, I start putting everything back in the envelope after the selection. And I had Gonzalo Rivera sign a photo. And Gonzalo Rivera wrote the number 4, at least in 3 to 4 hearings before today. That was his sworn testimony. Detective Lugo. Gonzalo Rivera wrote that 4. In 2020, that changes. Let's see, 2020, 10 years after the presentation of that photo pack. Now, Detective Lugo says, it's a mark. It's a mark. I wonder why. It is not good for him at all. to say it's a 4. Even though he says that he wrote a 4 on the form, the little selection form that has a little blank on it, that Gonzalo Rivera signs. He says, it's a mark now. It's a mark. So now he's putting the envelope back in his little packet there, and he says, I think I'm going to turn my recorder on, and I'm going to go through the same 20 questions that I asked Gonzalo Rivera before when I first met him, those lucidity questions to see if he was clear-minded. I'm going to ask him those again. And those are going to be open-ended questions. Remember when I said Detective Lugo, those were all open-ended questions. The only question that you asked that was suggested is, Gonzalo Rivera, you selected this particular photo. Now, if you really wanted to record, say, going okay, it's on. Gonzalo, what happened today? Why don't you just tell us? Remember what Jennifer Dysart said about suggestive questions. Suggestive questions are bad. I think it was even Detective Doyle, Officer Doyle. I said, we don't ask suggestive questions, do we? No, we don't ask suggestive questions. But Lugo does. The only question, even Lugo admitted to it, the only question, what was happening there? What happened during that period of time where it was not recorded? The most amazing and mind-boggling things that you can ever imagine. Detective Lugo tells you that he had Gonzalo Rivera, who, remember, that day had been given morphine just shortly before this whole presentation. Let's not forget that. You've got the medical records. Take a look at the timing of the morphine. You'll be able to go in there. You'll be able to see when he was administered morphine. Very shortly before. Very shortly before. But what does he do with that selection form that has a blank that Gonzalo Rivera is supposed to say, I selected, by signing, I selected this number. Detective Lugo tells you, I left it blank. Who in this planet, in this whole planet, has a witness sign a selection form that he picked a particular photo and it's blank? Gonzalo Rivera signed a form acknowledging that he selected blank? In what planet does anyone do that? Unless you're being manipulated under the influence of morphine and not realizing what actually is taking place. Because here he told you it was a fourth picture. The fourth picture is not Michael Keaton. The third picture is Michael Keaton. What happens? What happens when Detective Lugo gets back to the office? Detective Lugo gets back to the office and he doesn't know when, but he puts a 4 in that blank, and then at some point in time he realizes, oops, I better put a 3 because there's a 3 on Michael Keaton's picture, but it's not on the back, it's on the front. Very interesting when you look at Mr. Sperry's analysis. I want you to look at those numbers that appear at the very bottom that he analyzed. And there are two colors, pink and yellow. Because pink and different writing instruments were used. Wherever it's pink, it's a different writing instrument. Wherever it's yellow, it's a different writing instrument. Detective Lugo had no choice but to say it was in blank. Because we knew through our investigation, and Mr. Sperry told you, that his forensic analysis has shown that that was left in blank. Gonzalo Rivera, Detective Lugo had no choice but to come in here and admit to that. Remember the factors that I talked to you about early on? To consider witnesses' testimony and credibility. Use them. There's another very interesting one that says that just because you're a police officer, you're just like anybody else. You're just like any other witness. Ramon Galan, no photo fact was presented to him because frankly, he didn't see anything. But he doesn't hear rap music. He saw no car coming down the street or people talking about a car coming down the street. And frankly, he was the closest to the gentleman that walked up. Let me not say gentleman, to the murderer that walked up. He was the closest. He didn't hear about any rap music or, vehicle coming down fast or any of that. The consistency in this case is 6'1", 6'2", 250 to 280. Black shirt, sheriff. Black pump action shotgun. It's across the board. 2 hands. One of the victims says, oh yeah, there was a badge in one hand. He was holding the firearm, the pump action shotgun in the other hand. Things that would create an impossibility for Michael Keatley to be able to do it with his disability. One individual says, after the shooting, the guy ran away. Nobody described any type of disability, any limp, any hand in an awkward position. But they all say 2 hands are being used. Now the prosecution wants you to believe that between the time of his incident and the shooting that somehow Michael Keatley grew another arm. Some miracle. Oh, he's using it as a shelf. So if you've got a shelf, you can do all these things. And don't forget, according to Mr. Beltran, not only can you do that, but you can go up the stairs, you can walk all around, keep shooting people, pumping, racking, pumping everybody. That's what they're suggesting this gentleman could do. However, he's not 6'1", 6'2", 250, and 280. That's a big problem. And that consistency is one after another after another. Jennifer Dicer. Exposure duration. Weapon focus. Cross-race bias. Alcohol and drug use. They all are factors in evaluating the reliability of eyewitness testimony. One thing that she said struck me. Confidence in an identification does not, and I remind you, does not equal to accuracy in the investigation. You're going to have all of the charts for Mr. Sperry. You're going to have all of these pieces of evidence that we were introduced. But I don't want to leave without talking about Jennifer Clark. And so let's talk about Jennifer Clark. It took 12 years and some guy that doesn't own a gun to present to Jennifer Clark, the forensic expert for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, say, Jennifer, I did a little research. I think your opinion's a little wrong here because you're saying that that these shell casings, that the tool marks on them could be consistent with a Glock or a Smith & Wesson Sigma Series 45 semi-automatic. No. Smith & Wesson did not make a 45 automatic in their Sigma series. So I called her, hey, just being upfront with you. Check it out. Here's the manufacturer's letter I just received. She calls me back. Yeah, Rick, you're right. Jennifer, it took you 12 years to realize that your opinion, which is crucial, she's a forensic expert. She's got people's lives in her hands. Is this the type of expert that we have confidence in her abilities? Let's talk about Jennifer Clark. She gave her opinions in this case in the year 2010. In the year 2016, very important thing happened in America. Our President of the United States formed the President's Council of Advisors on Scientific Technology, one of the largest studies known to man, not only in ballistics, but in just about every field of forensics within the criminal justice system. They had the best experts from MIT, Harvard. They had prosecutors from the Department of Justice, judges. It was a massive, massive study. 6 years after Jennifer Dysart gave her opinion, she agreed on the stand what they had said. Sufficient studies have not, and I repeat, have not been done to understand the reliability and the reproducibility of the methods that are used for the foundational validity in the field of tool mark identification. 6 years after her opinion, this incredible study told her, there's not enough science here. What are you doing? Now, as I instructed her, or as I questioned her, I said, you know, Jennifer, there were other studies as well that disagreed with PCAST. But PCAST was not made just of one or two scientists or even a group of scientists. It was a broad spectrum of individuals from the criminal justice system, from the most advanced scientific community in the world. Now, I showed her through my little arrows all the dissimilarities in her tool mark impressions. And you know what she says? Oh, yeah, there are dissimilarities. There's tons of them. Do you count them? No, I don't count them. Well, if you don't count the dissimilarities, how do you know what the percentage of dissimilarities are to the percentage of similarities? I don't care. If I find an area that I think matches, it's good enough for me. Remember what the standard for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is in order for her to render an opinion. Sufficient agreement. What in the... Whose sufficient agreement? Sufficient agreement. And by the way, Rick, you're not going to be able to test what I did, because guess what? The only way that you can render an opinion is by looking under a microscope. That's what she said. This is not sufficient. You just have to look under a microscope. Hey, Jennifer, what kind of microscope do you have? Back in 2010. I don't. Do you have a 3D virtual microscope? I didn't have it back in 2010. Do you have it now? Yeah, I got it now. Did you put all these ballistics back through your new fancy-dancy virtual microscope? No, I did not. Why do you think? She didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Can you imagine, why would you not, 12 years later, we're about to go to trial, that you would not use the latest and sophisticated to give you information. I'm confident you all have taken copious notes. I've watched. Look at those notes. Examine the evidence. Test the evidence. Test each other. I am confident when you do so that you will come back with one verdict and only one verdict. And that is that the state of Florida has not proven their case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been in those seats for about 2 hours now, so I'm going to give you a short break. Please do not discuss the case before the safety rebuttal. Please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or anyone else. Please do not do research related to the case and with our reports of the case outside of the courtroom. It'll be one of those where when you're ready to come back in, we'll bring you back in. All right? Jury is exited. Everyone may be seated, and the door is closed. All right. Well, a couple of things. I want y'all to take a break before the rebuttal. A couple of things. I want to make sure now that we are all in agreement as to who the alternates are, because once the rebuttal is finished, I'm going to read 3.13, which is less than a page. It'll only take about half a minute, and then I'm going to release I'm going to send the jury back to deliberate, but I'm going to announce who the alternates are, keep them behind, and then release them. I've got seated is seat number 11, formerly 28, seated in seat number 14, formerly 203, and seated in seat number 15, formerly 149 as our three alternates.
I think so. Can I cheat off your paper?
Absolutely. Majority, if you need to take a look.
Yeah, I think
That's who I have.
Right, unless something changes between now and then, obviously, we'll have discussion if one of our others become unavailable. But we've discussed and decided juror number 12, so she's going to go back and begin deliberating. It's almost 3 o'clock now, so they're not going to have a lot of time before we're going to have to make that 5:30 break. Just a rough estimate, approximately how long you think the rebuttal's going to last?
I know I have 40 minutes, and I might take it.
Okay, so if we come back at 3:30, we'll try to get back before 3:30. Just generally, their breaks have been lasting about 30 minutes, but if we came back at 3:15, 40 minutes is going to put us at 4 o'clock, so they'll get an hour and a half back there before we take our 5:30 break. Okay, all right, enjoy the break. See you in a few minutes.
Okay, forgot to unmute. I got it the first time, but not the second time. Oh well. There are so many things that the defendant's attorney didn't talk about that he could have talked about, and he talked for over 2 hours. So, I mean, he made some great points, but he left out a lot of things. In my opinion, he left out some stuff, but maybe he didn't want to draw attention to it. The whole Wesley Smith and the collecting of the shell casings so close to the murders, and his connection with David Beckwith and David, he didn't talk about any of that. So I was a little puzzled by that, but that's all right. So I think we'll take a little break here. I'm not going to end the live, but we're going to take a little break. I'm going to um, put up my screensaver, and I'm going to go eat some lunch real quick, and then I will be back. So we'll stay right here. I'll be watching for them to go live, and then. But I'm not going to end the live. We'll still be live. I'll still be here. I'm just going to go get some lunch real quick. So stay tuned. I'm back. I had a really, oh, it looked terrible. Gosh, what is going on here? Let me redo my hair. It's kind of windy outside, so I'm watching the courtroom. They're milling about. As soon as they come back, we'll go live with them again. But during the closing of the defense, I got mail, a diamond painting. I'm going to unbox this one because this is the next one that I'm going to do. This is for Enablers Outpost, and I'm so excited for it. But the box is huge. That's a big old painting. Yep. I guess I'm not meant to do small paintings. So let me get back to turn this little ticker off since we're here. There you go. Where'd my comments go? There they are. Robin said, oh my God, I jumped 6 feet in the air. Didn't mean to startle you, honey. Oh gosh. So lunch was good. So when this is over, or when it goes to the jury to start deliberating, what we're going to hear now is the prosecution's rebuttal argument, which she said might be 40 minutes. So she talked this morning for almost 2 hours. I didn't mean to scare you guys. Sorry. Sure, she's going to address this whole, Detective Lugo didn't do his job thing. The only, I'm not even going to say because, well, maybe I will say, Detective Lugo is Latin, and I don't know, do the Latins stick together in this community? Maybe, why was he so focused on this guy? Lisa said, I saw you before I heard you. Oh, because of the lag? I don't know. Anyway. So what I was saying, after the rebuttal, he's got 1 page of instructions that he has to read to the jury. You have to go back and you have to, choose a foreman and blah, blah, blah. Then they're not going to have a lot of time, maybe about, an hour to deliberate before they have to stop at 5:30. The juror number 12 has to go pick up her kids, drop them off somewhere, and then come back. And then I don't know how she's going to get back in the courthouse because it's going to be closed. And then they're going to continue their deliberations. I hope the judge is going to order them dinner because, that would just be the right thing to do. Then they may or may not agree. If they don't come to an agreement or on some kind of verdict tonight, he may have them back tomorrow. He has talked about having them back on Saturday. So I think we'll hear more about that as the rest of the day progresses. But in any case, I'm going to be live on Mickey Sunshine Creates tonight. It'll be simulcast on my channel. So you'll just see my channel go live. So just jump into his chat or my chat. It doesn't matter. I can see them both. She can see them both. But I will be probably on the road. I'm going to go over to check on my grandkids because my son and daughter-in-law are out of town. All right, here's the judge. He is back. Let me edit so I can hear what he's saying. Thank you all for listening, watching this with me today. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up, though. It really does help. Did I put those in the wrong place? I sure did. Well, I ain't changing it. No, they're in the right place. Okay. Thought I put drills in the wrong place. I did that last night, and it took me about 30 minutes to get all the drills that I had put down in the wrong place, get them up, pick them up, and put the right ones down. And What a mess. I'm sure that's what they're talking about, is whether they're going to have this jury come back Saturday or Monday, because nobody knows. They're not arguing at the bench. I think they're discussing the logistics. You know, how are we going to get this woman back in after she goes home and picks up, drops her kids off with a babysitter. Robin, yeah, I guess so. You were up all night with me. Thank you. Robin, Lisa, you're so sweet. Thank you. Now, really, whether or not you guys were here, I would watch this. So I just enjoy watching it with you guys, and I enjoy listening to it while I craft. I really want so bad to put this away and get my crochet out, but I also want to finish this because I only have 2 sections left, and I still don't know what it is. Yeah, I have no idea. Some kind of creature. I think I'm seeing a tail, but not sure. Maybe if I turn the light pad off, maybe I can see what it is. Hold on. Let me move some things around here. Or here's an idea. I can just turn the camera on. Let me just. Let's turn off the light pad. Yeah, they're talking about logistics for sure. What's for supper? Now I see some eyes up here. I don't want to. All right, let me. There. I'll still watch and see what they're. What do you guys think this thing is? Now this looks like it's got like a tail here, like a claw. And it's got eyes and horns and gills, and I have no idea. A water dragon. I never heard of a water dragon, but I can roll with that. Yeah. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. So I'm trying to think of the best way.
Yes. Your fans ready?
Okay. Let me put them back in. Pat again. Get the jury. All eyes. Move this. My controls are not working. There we go.
Jury is present and seated. Everyone else may be seated this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. We're going to get to the rebuttal argument of the state, but before we do that, was anybody exposed to anything about the case during the last break, or did anybody discuss amongst themselves or with anyone else anything about the case by a show of hands? Let the record reflect there are no hands. Again, thank you all very much. We're now going to turn to the state for their rebuttal argument. You may
Thank you,
proceed.
Your Honor. Thank you for the court defense counsel. Defense exhibit number 10. The rumor. Yes, it broke on November 25th of 2010. It broke because the source of this rumor is the defendant. Because the defendant was all over Ruskin and Waimama on his route asking about Creeper. But it didn't stop with him just asking about Creeper. He told people what Creeper had done, that he was looking for him, and he mentioned Ocean Mist. He also told them that he's Hispanic or Mexican, that he's got a tattoo on his arm, that he is the one who robbed and shot him, and he's asking information about him. And he told more than one of those people that they lived on Ocean Mist. And this is Thanksgiving Day morning. 6 people are shot in the early morning hours of Thanksgiving. I submit to you, it was all over the news. And as soon as this Ruskin and Waimama woke up on Thanksgiving Day morning and saw that there were 6 Hispanic males that were shot on Ocean Mist, who do you think is the first person that came to mind? The defendant. But that's all this is. The rumor doesn't prove anything. But Lieutenant Lugo didn't target the defendant because of this. Lieutenant Lugo followed the investigation. You've heard an awful lot about by a couple was shot up. Didn't hear that anybody was murdered 2 weeks ago, right? And he is a former gang detective. That is an area, that's a rough area. And so it may be just a little understandable that the people who live there, the people, by the way, who are victims in this case, not suspects, but victims in this case, might be a little bit leery talking to law enforcement. But you heard that he couldn't put his first impressions aside, that those 2 first interviews that he did, they asked those questions. So if you want to talk about a rush to judgment, the rush to judgment in this case, the first assumptions were that this was a typical gang-related case. Payback, right? The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office didn't just follow those assumptions. They followed the evidence. And those live victims who were immediately interviewed, Mr. Rodriguez, Daniel Beltran, Gonzalo Guevara at the hospital, even after all the drinking and everything that had happened, that first deputy, Deputy Doyle, said, well, he's being treated. He's got severe gunshot wounds, that he can still answer questions. And he, even then, admitted that he had been hanging out drinking with his friends when someone dressed up in a sheriff's office was looking for a creeper. You heard Lieutenant Lugo said this broke very quickly. Of course it did. Of course it did. Because he was all over town saying he's looking for a creeper. He lives on Ocean Mist. Went to the right person. Because you remember, those interviews are in there. Listen to them. You can listen to them again. Because when they are interviewing him, he's also watching the news. And what does he tell law enforcement when he hears what happened on Ocean Mist? That there's a shooting? That his friends are calling him, wondering if he went ballistic. Those are his words. Because guess what? He thinks he meets the description. Because he's joking, telling those detectives, what did I do? I went and hobble there. And I want to talk to you about this investigation. This wasn't a sloppy investigation. I think you heard from the defense attorney, what was the wattage of the light? Do you need to know what the wattage of the light was to know that the light on the porch gives off light? That those victims were playing cards, that there was enough light for them to play poker? Do you see what's on the table? Your common sense doesn't leave you. We rely upon it. You were selected because of it. And common sense says that when there is a light on the porch, it illuminates the porch. Does it illuminate all the way to the street? No. It's a dark street. We all know it's a dark street, right? But it doesn't magically stop at the porch's edge, does it? No. There was light on that porch. And you don't need to know what the wattage of that was. You don't need to have to sit in that chair and see what the victim saw. And you know what happened on that porch because you heard from the witnesses, the victims that are still alive who can remember what happened on that porch. And he kept talking about CSI Patel. States 1 through 29. I'm not going to show them all again. But these are the photographs from that crime scene. States 30 to 58B and 1 through 29 shows various angles of that porch, shows different perspectives. You saw how painstakingly they had to describe each and every photograph because they wanted to give you close-ups. They wanted to let you know exactly in relation to where that shell casing was picked up, where it came from. When they removed boards, they wanted to show you what boards they removed and where those shell casings were, where those projectiles were. And you heard from Lieutenant Lugo that this crime scene investigator alone took over 240 photos, so we didn't even introduce them. But if you wanted to put all of these photographs together, you could know what every square inch of that porch showed. You could see every side angle. You can see all around that house. You can see all the way out to the street. Do any of you need to know what the dimensions of the porch are to know the horrific crime that occurred there? Do any of you need to see a diagram with photographs of each and every single angle? They were thorough. You want to talk about the professionalism of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office? They got called out at 2:30 a.m. the morning of Thanksgiving. They left their families, they left their home, and they did what they always do. And it wasn't just Lieutenant Lugo. There were 20 detectives working on this case. There were multiple crime scene investigators because it doesn't matter where a homicide happens. It doesn't matter when 4 individuals get seriously injured and 2 get shot. All of us are protected. Everyone here deserves to be treated equally by law enforcement. This was a thorough investigation. Do you need a crime scene reenactment by victims who were traumatized in this case? Is that the victims needed to do some kind of crime scene reenactment? They were still in the hospital when that scene was being processed. What would that add to your understanding of this case? Talked about Omar paper. Mr. S mentioning, talking about weighing his credibility. The state did not call him as a witness. We did not elicit facts in our case in chief or relied upon his testimony for anything. So suppose you may be weighing his credibility about all of the gang information that was elicited from Mr. Bion by the defense. However, Mr. Bion is not on trial for anything. This case is about who shot Juan and Sergio Guitron on 604 Ocean Mist. This case is about all of those 4 other victims: Juan, Daniel Beltran, Richard Cantu, Gonzalo. They are innocent victims in this case. Jose Rodriguez may not have told the detective about made him at 2:30 in the morning because his friends, his family were shot up, and the person they're looking for is Creeper. Makes a little bit of sense. It's no mystery why somebody would run down the street. He lives 3 houses down. And when law enforcement found out that there is a person named Creeper, they immediately brought him to that District 4 office to interview him. And you heard about this Samantha Jaramillo. Again, those weren't questions we brought out. They were asking about the boyfriend. They questioned Detective Lugo about that. He told you the reason he is doing that is because Creeper was the target. He wants to know, is there anyone who you can think of that would be after you? And a normal person that one would think about in any investigation is an ex-boyfriend of the person he's dating. And guess what? That person is in prison. So he didn't do it. And that is the end of the lead. So no, Detective Lieutenant Lugo didn't follow and go to prison because he could not have done it. And no, there was no follow-up on a green minivan where the person fell asleep in the car and was doing marijuana and had absolutely no law enforcement uniform, no connection to this case. Other members of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office went to those scenes, interviewed people, and had one of them said, oh, he was wearing a law enforcement officer uniform. Oh, he was looking for Creeper. That is not connected to what the facts were when Lieutenant Lugo was interviewing the witnesses to this case. He went to Creeper because Creeper was the target. The other green minivan at the CVS, again, not a law enforcement officer uniform. That was a robbery. That guy's wearing a ski mask. No connection, no relation to this case at all. He followed the evidence. Who would have a beef with Creeper? Who would have a reason to hurt Creeper? And the case broke quickly because he advertised it all over the streets of Ruskin that he wanted to know where Creeper was, that he wanted revenge against Creeper, that Creeper lived on Ocean Mist. Following the evidence, witness, not that text message. Law enforcement can't control a text message, but what they did is they went out and they interviewed witness after witness after witness, all of which said it's him. He's the one that is looking for Creeper. And there's been a lot of criticism about Lieutenant Lugo. The person who went to that crime scene, what did he say, 20 times? The person who went to the hospital multiple days because there was a potential eyewitness still who had not seen a photo pack. I want to talk a little bit about those photo packs because Jose Rodriguez doesn't identify the defendant. You heard that they knew about the ice cream man. There are a lot of people in life that people have minor contact with. There are a lot of people that don't pay attention to people that are vendors up in a ice cream van or someone who serves you a sandwich, even if you go in there once or twice a month. You can see a person like that in a different setting and have no idea that that is a person that you have had contact with on multiple occasions. People don't always know or recognize people that they have minor contact with. And yes, he's in Ocean Mist all the time. He's in an ice cream van. People hand money to vendors all the time. Can you pick them out of a lineup? He doesn't have conversations with Creeper. He legitimately looked at this photo pack and didn't pick them out. This is a younger photo of the defendant. The defendant has put on weight. He did not look like this at the time that this happened. He looked like those figures that they gave you about what Daniel Beltran described, what Gonzalo Guevara described. 6'6", 250, 260, short, puffy, dirty blonde hair, brownish orange. Well, this is Michael Keatley just a couple weeks in January after his shooting, right? Does hair look brown to you in there, this picture? Being able to describe someone is a skill set. Recognition is different. If you take a family of four, a mother, a father, two little kids, and they go to a amusement park, Disneyland with grandma, and grandma has platinum blonde hair, it's very thin, very light, and you ask all of those family members to describe her. Do you think that they are all going to come up with the exact description of grandma, even her hair color? Some may know what platinum blonde is. Some may say gray. Some may say white. Little kids are going to have a very different description looking at grandma than mom and dad. But if they go into a park and she goes to the restroom, when she comes out with 20 different people, all four of them can recognize her. It is hard to describe people. So I want to talk about Dr. Dysart a little bit, their expert. The first question from the defense attorney and the last question from the prosecutor made it clear that she doesn't get to decide whether or not the eyewitnesses in this case made an accurate identification. And she has great credentials. She's from the academic world, and she talked about all these studies that she does. And there is a place for that. And it's valuable studies, 100%. And they take those information and they try to make things better. But those studies are not real world, are they? Because she talked about it, right? Especially intoxication. She said that study, they went into a bar, talked to people who had been drinking, left for 15 minutes, and then showed a single photo and did breathalyzers. And that it was more unlikely for the people who were more intoxicated to be able to accurately identify a person. What she couldn't do, because there are ethics involved in study, is give them any drugs. And we all understand that. She did a breathalyzer. What she can't speak to is tolerance, right? Because somebody who is big and somebody who drinks on a regular basis has a much higher tolerance than someone who doesn't. And it takes a lot more for them to drink before they will even feel the effects of alcohol. She can't talk about the illegal drugs because they can't use it. In fact, if there are any drugs involved, they're not going to use them. But she can't certainly take into account any kind of interactions. Maybe it makes it worse. Maybe one counteracts the other. Maybe one's a stimulant and one's a depressant. She can't speak to that, and she can't do studies on that. And what she certainly can't do a study on is the horrific, nightmarish conditions that those victims were faced with. Because when people are in a bar just socializing and some random person comes up and makes a conversation with them and they talk to them for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they may be paying attention, they may not, they may be distracted by something else, or maybe their boyfriend is across the bar. It is totally different if they sent someone in there with a shotgun and started threatening them. You think that somebody's attention is a little bit different in that situation? You think those people might be able to remember and pay attention more, just a little bit more, to the person threatening their life? So there is a big difference in those studies. And I by no means am diminishing that type of work. And there is a value and there is a place for it. But she doesn't decide whether or not those victims made an accurate identification. You do. And regardless of whether Mr. Guevara said 4 on the stand, and Lieutenant Lugo, by the way, once said 4 in a depot after he hadn't seen this in 4 years. Because that X, sometimes an X is just an X. And he does that when he's asking somebody to sign a document. There are multiple documents. He needs somebody to sign something. After Gonzalo Guevara signed this, he looked at this later. And this looks like a 4. So when you see it years later, maybe you think, oh, I picked out a 4. But what is absolutely clear is that after he saw this photo, he had an emotional reaction. Because this person is the person responsible for the scariest moment of his life. He will never forget this face. Never. And it doesn't matter if that is an X or a 4 or the numbers were put on afterwards, or if Lugo dropped all of those photographs, because he only signed the one that he knew shot him. And this is also different than the photo pack that showed Daniel Beltran. Daniel Beltran could not make an ID because guess what? They still didn't get an accurate photo of the defendant. This thin photo was the one in Daniel Beltran's photo pack. And things are relative. In a stressful, scary situation, people are going to pay attention to different things. And in this case, Daniel Beltran, his back was to the street. Gonzalo Guevara was not. He was facing this way when the killer approached. Daniel Beltran isn't looking at the killer. In fact, he's more concerned about what? He's more concerned because there's drugs and he really thinks that he's a law enforcement officer. So he is not looking as long as Gonzalo Guevara is at him. He's not looking in the right direction. And he is focused on getting rid of drugs. The whole time, however, Gonzalo Guevara is looking this way. And he has a much better view walking up the stairwell. Sorry. Yeah. Talked about that investigation was. 20 detectives, multiple deputies responding. Those search warrants for the computer that Mr. Escobar specifically mentioned that said that there was a misstatement. He said that there was I believe he said the records were falsified, that there was a lie. There were photos that were found in that house. Wasn't of the victims. It was relevant to this investigation because they knew he was targeting Hispanic males. And so whenever something is communicated from one detective to the other, there can be things lost in translation. But nobody was purposely trying to falsify anything. Again, he says something about the word abandonment in that car. That car was returned to the defendant. Who cares whether or not some form having to do with that car, somebody miswrote abandonment in there. Nothing bad was happening because of that form. They had a legitimate reason to detain him, to get that vehicle for the search warrant. Sorry, he was not under arrest. They had a legitimate reason to take that car and hold it until a judge could approve a search warrant. Going back to that computer and some of the things that Detective Lugo did, as well as the phone records, because these are things that he did do. Because you heard a lot of talk about cell phone records and what they can and cannot do. And you heard the defendant deny or challenge them to get his cell phone records. So if you go to November 24th, of 2010, Jen, can you help me? We're gonna have to. You can see that there is a gap in time, and that after 10 o'clock, there is no phone usage until the next morning. This crime occurs sometime after 2 o'clock. That 911 call comes in at 2:22. He is purposely not utilizing his phone. You heard that the text messages were not subpoenaed or did a search warrant for Metro PCS. But you also heard Lieutenant Lugo specifically say that the text messages were captured. That's that redacted document, 207. And again, there is a gap. If you go to November 24th of 2010, the last text message is 11/24/2010 at 5:55. Nope, I'm sorry, 9:54 p.m. And then the next one is November 25th at 4:06 p.m. There is another huge gap. So there can be no mapping because he knew that they can trace the phone. You heard that Lieutenant Lugo sat with Connie Bell and went over the computer stuff. And the reason the computer stuff is there is to show his knowledge and his capability with firearms, because this wasn't a pump action shotgun. These are .45 caliber bullets. And there is no shotgun that shoots .45 caliber bullets. Those victims are mistaken because he needed a modification to that Glock firearm, to that Glock 45. There were multiple modifications made. There was a barrel replacement, and there was something that changed the appearance of that gun that made it look like something it wasn't, that made it easier for him to shoot times. There was a search for silencers. And I'm not suggesting to you that they were used in this case, but these are patents. These are how to make them. He was a mechanic. He worked on planes. He has the knowledge, the capability, the skill set to be able to modify a gun. All of the facts and all of the evidence in this case are overwhelming. And it proves beyond all reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Guilty for killing Juan and Sergio Petron. Their premeditated murder. He is guilty for the attempted murder of all 4 of those victims.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have one final instruction to you before you go back and begin deliberating. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my microphone and I'm going to read it to you. In just a few moments, you'll be taken to the jury room by the court deputy. A foreperson who will preside over your deliberations. The foreperson should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is also the foreperson's job to sign and date the verdict form when all of you have agreed on a verdict, and to bring the verdict form back to the courtroom when you return. During deliberations, jurors must communicate about the case only with one another and only when all jurors are present in the jury room. If a juror goes to the restroom, the deliberations should stop until that juror returns. You are not to communicate with any person outside the jury about this case. Until you have reached a verdict, you must not talk about this case in person or through the telephone, writing, or electronic communication, such as a blog, Twitter, email, text message, or any other means. Do not contact anyone to assist you during deliberations. These communications rules apply until I discharge you at the end of the case. If you become aware of any violation of these instructions or any other instruction I have given in the case, you must tell me by giving a note to the deputy.
Many of you may have cell phones, tablets, laptops, or other electronic devices here in the courtroom. The rules do not allow you to bring your phones or any of those types of electronic devices into the jury room. Kindly leave those devices on your seats where they will be guarded by the court deputy while you deliberate. If you need to communicate with me, send a note through the court deputy. If you have voted, do not disclose the actual vote in the note. If you have a question, I will talk with the attorneys before I answer, so it may take some time. You may continue your deliberations while you wait for my answer. I will answer any questions, if I can, in writing or orally here in open court. During the trial, items were received into evidence as exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits that you think will help you in your deliberations. These exhibits will be sent into the jury room with you when you begin to deliberate. In closing, let me remind you that it is important that you follow the law spelled out in these instructions in deciding your verdict. There are no other laws that apply to this case. Even if you do not like the laws that must be applied, you must use them. For more than 2 centuries, we have lived by the Constitution and the law. No juror has the right to violate rules we all share. That is all of the instructions, and as I indicated, the instructions as well as the verdict form will be coming back to you in the jury momentarily, along with all of the other evidence that was admitted during this trial. This is the time when I send the jury back to begin deliberating, and we keep 3 of you behind. We selected alternates. You may have figured out that a jury is 12. We always select alternates, particularly in a long trial like this, because we just never know what's going to happen. Many times we have to rely on alternates to step in because we lose individuals throughout the course of a lengthy trial due to emergencies, sickness, illness, number of things. I'm going to ask these 3 individuals to remain behind. I'll have some additional discussions with them. They are seated in seat number 11, formerly juror number 28, seated in seat number 14, formerly juror number 203, and seated in seat number 15, formerly juror 149. So those are the alternates who will remain behind. And as I said, I'll have some additional instructions for you. The rest of you are going to go back into the jury room. I know that juror number 12, seat number 12, we had a discussion earlier, and I know you have to leave at 5:30. So that's approximately an hour and a half from now. We will at that time take an hour break where the jury will not be able to deliberate until juror number 12 gets back. I will also order dinner, pizza, to be delivered at 6:30 when you all pick up your deliberations, if it's necessary, to continue deliberations past 5:30. So that is the plan, and I'm going to go ahead and send the jury back to begin deliberating. We'll get you this stuff. Juror number 15, if you have stuff back there you need to get out, the bailiff will get it for you. I can't let you go back there with them, but they'll get your stuff, and then I have some additional instructions, as I said, for you. All rise for the jury. Yes, absolutely. Take your notes with you. At this time, those who are going back to deliberate will take their notepads with them. Leave your phones on the chair, or do you want them to hand them to you, Eva? Leave them on the chair, and the bailiff will collect them and put them in a box. Your phone's in your bag in there. When the bailiff takes you in, just go in and get your phone and then give it to her, if your phone is in the room. I'm sorry? If they're Apple Watches, yes, I'm afraid so. No, you're fine. We try to keep up with technology. All right, the jury is exited. I'll go ahead and have the alternates go ahead and take a seat. Everyone else in the courtroom can be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm being careful not to use your names because there's live broadcast of the proceedings, which you have not been able to have to watch at night or in the evenings. One of the things that I do when I release you now is let you know that you can do that.
You can go and watch the news. You can go and pull up the recorded live stream of the trial that's been going on for the past, well, jury selection was the first week, and then trial. But all of my prior restrictions to you about doing research, looking up stuff, watching reports of the crime outside of the trial, outside of the courtroom, no longer apply. I usually save that, tell you that, but for some reason it came up a little out of order. Before I say that your service here was just as important as the 12 individuals that went back. I briefly mentioned before that many times we have to rely on alternate jurors. Trust me, it happens all the time, even in short trials. Fortunately, even though this trial lasted over 4 weeks, everyone remained healthy and we didn't lose anybody during the course of the trial. So we were very fortunate in that respect. But now is when I tell you, sorry, you don't go back. And I never know how the alternates are going to feel about that. I've seen you, you're 15 feet away from me, and I've seen you throughout the course of this trial paying attention, taking notes, which is what we require and ask of our jurors. So we greatly, greatly appreciate that. And we thank you. This is my last opportunity to thank you for your very important service. I'm going to let you go out that door. If you want to stick behind, you're welcome to that. If you want to call my JA to find out what the jury found, we'll give you the number. You already have a contact number. But at this time, I finally want to thank you again for your patience with us, your very important service, and wish you the best. So thank you all very much, and I will release the alternates at this time. We have letters. Yes, I always forget that. The deputy has letters that say that you were here the entire 4 weeks. You're welcome. Alternate jurors have exited the courtroom. Everyone else may be seated at this time. First question is, are there any objections? I probably should have asked this before, but I can cover it now. Are there any objections to the instructions as given other than any objections that were made during the charging conference and that are preserved for the record?
Yes, sir. I was going to make sure that my previous discussions are still preserved. That being the case, and Your Honor acknowledging that, no, you did read.
And we did have that one incident with the verdict form that was changed. It is all up here. I encourage you all to take a look at it. I have all of the instructions. I have the verdict form that made the changes to the to the lesser included. This is the stack of instructions. This is the verdict form that I am paper clipping, and just make sure it stays on top of the instructions. Just make sure that I didn't get the extra page too. I did not. We'll take recess until we hear a question. Well, I take that back until we hear a question or a verdict. This time, though, we're going to break at 5:30. So I'll come back in at 5:30. I don't know. I mean, actually, have release them. My plan is to release the entire jury at 5:30. I don't want to keep the other 11 back there because they're not allowed to deliberate. So I don't want to keep them all cooped up in the room. We will give them a break. You know what? I prefer to bring them in and instruct them just to be sure that they're to not do any research, to avoid all reports. So I think that's a better procedure. We'll bring them in at 5:30. So I want everybody here at 5:30. I'll set them free at 5:30 with a strong instruction about avoiding any reports outside of the courtroom. All right. So then anything from the state before I appreciate it. The professionalism, the experience of the attorneys on both sides, trust me, does not go unnoticed by the court. I thank you all and I appreciate you all very much.
I can't believe that he just did that. Why would you release the alternates? my feeling is this is going to be a deliberation that takes more than one day. Unless he's just optimistically thinking they're going to go back and they're going to reach a quick verdict tonight and everything, it'll all be over, which is why he didn't talk about coming back tomorrow. But I don't think that's realistic in this case. And now he's let the alternates go. What if, little Johnny wakes up sick tomorrow and mommy has to stay home with him, and now we don't have an alternate? I think that was a mistake. I don't think he should have done that. Normally they put them into another room and they give them dinner, and they're not allowed to go anywhere until the fat lady sings. And I haven't sung today, and Lee said it's all your fault that I've got that song in my head. Damn it, I have been singing it all day long. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought her rebuttal was, I wasn't impressed. I guess you can tell I wasn't impressed. But that being said, we now have a new gang name. What was it? The Golden Nomies gang. That'll be our little secret, okay? Yeah, I like that he made them. They're going to have, not only do they have to turn over their cell phones, now you have to turn over your watches too, because they're all attached to your phone. That's hilarious. Yeah, when will that end? All right, guys. It is 3:11 here. I'm going to get in the car and head over and check on the grandkids. Just make sure their house hasn't burned down. So, anything from the gallery? Nomies? Anything? All right, I will be live tonight on Mickey Sunshine Creates. It'll be simulcast on my channel as well, so you can watch on either channel. It's up to you. I can see both chats. We can see both chats, Mickey and I. So what I will do is I'll put up a verdict watch thumbnail. It will have a time attached to it. That doesn't mean I'm going to go live at that time. I will go live when I see that there's a verdict, or I won't go live if there's a question. Hopefully we'll know whether it's a question or a verdict ahead of time. But and when they come back at 5:30, I don't think I need to go live for that either. I'll be live on Mickey's channel then, and I can watch it and let you know if anything unusual is happening. They're getting pizza now. I want pizza for dinner. Yeah, I was going to order Chinese. Maybe pizza. I'm sure that jury is probably getting sick of pizza. They've probably been eating it all week. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Thanks for watching this with me. And hey, Carl, don't forget, Diablo all weekend, free to play. So, all right, I'll see you guys tonight. Bye, everybody. Oh, you're having pizza too. Bye.